Alright, let's start here talking with famous people. Tanner Bonin, you say, this video and other recent videos on FI sound a lot like ENTP with tertiary FE has elected to scapegoat himself in light of recent lamentations about his inability to emote, and thereby looking for NTP reasons to denounce his conscious experience of what it is to feel. At 4:15, INFP manifests that deontological imperative in everything they do not utilize another as a means to an end, but rather as an end in and of itself. I'm not sure which INFPs you've been hanging out with, but this is certainly untrue. INFPs commit considerable violence, and ironically so, since it emerges from their perpetual attempts to avoid even the remotest possibility of doing so. Why? Because guilt and punishment experiences don't feel good. Further, this notion of FI as empathetic is a non sequitur. The only time you're going to get true empathy from FI is if its agent has had exactly the experience you've had. And even then, one might question whether, in fact, this is true empathy of another, or if it is just resonance within the agent's self-configuration, which also happens to be present in another flesh tomb. Otherwise, it's sympathy. They're imagining themselves in the position you describe, or that they consider you to be in, and then feel the subjective state they would derive from it. This is palpable when you ask an INFP for advice about what you should do in your situation. They will either say nothing, very little, or whatever it is that they would do. This is not sharing an understanding of another's feelings and experiences. Okay, let's do this one half at a time, I guess. Your first sentence says, this sounds a lot like. So it's not really making any claim, so I have no reason for me to really address it. Second sentence is a citation about my point about deontological imperative. Well, I mean, I think basically the rest of this is more or less a semantics dispute, but you'll see why it's, to the extent that it's not, I'm right. It says, I'm not sure which INFPs you've been hanging out with. This is certainly untrue. INFPs can commit considerable violence, and ironically so, since it emerges from the perpetual attempts to avoid even the remotest possibility of doing so. Well, that's the thing. That's why I'm saying is they manifest the deontological imperative, because they are perpetually attempting to avoid even the remotest possibility of doing violence. That's where deontology falls short, and why we have a negative rights framework instead that involves the forfeiture of rights when rights are violated. That solves for that problem, right? Just because I am praising them for manifesting the deontological perspective doesn't mean that I think the deontological perspective is correct. I think that the engine of it is preferable to the utilitarian engine. And nor am I saying that they don't ever commit violence. I know as well that INFPs are capable of incredibly blind justifications for their own bad behavior that blame others who don't fulfill their needs as they expect them to be fulfilled. I understand that. I'm not disputing that. It doesn't change the fact that you just made my point. That's the point I'm making. So you and I are in agreement. Now, this other part, maybe we are in disagreement. You say that this notion of FI as empathetic is a non sequitur. Well, it may be a lot of things, but it's not a non sequitur. I mean, look it up. The only time you're going to get empathy from FI is if its agent has had exactly the experience you've had. And even then, one might question whether, in fact, this is true empathy of another, or if it is just resonance within the agent's self-configuration, which also happens to be present in another flesh tomb. Okay, well, I would argue against this by saying that you get true empathy in the sense that the INFP understands the full range of emotional responses that they might have to something. They understand the basic fragility of life, and they understand the fragility of the other because they understand themselves as fundamentally fragile and subject to dramatic changes in impact within the self due to external events occurring. And the extent to which they're able to understand that they are responsible for their own emotional response and not the event itself is a good way for them to learn uh, accountability. The distinction between empathy and sympathy here, well, if you want to call what I'm saying sympathy, because I'm saying that they're cautious with others because they view others through the same lens as themselves, namely as being capable of any number of wide-ranging and massive or minor emotional upsettednesses. Then that makes them deontological in nature, empathetic in nature, insofar as they. Well, I mean, I guess I'm using our word wrong. I guess you're right about that. I guess it's not exactly empathy, but it plays out as empathy in conversations where they're defending people who aren't present about anything that you might suggest, any shit talking, right? That's an example of what I mean. If it's not empathy, then call it what you want. I'll concede the point about the word empathy is probably not the best word to use. That is not the best word to use. The palpable, this is palpable when you ask an INFP to advise you about things in your situation. Well, I mean, I think that's, again, evidence of them being unable to particularize because they are manifesting the deontological perspective. And you love INFPs, good for you. And you wouldn't mistake their feelings, reactions reflecting my well-being. Neither would I. Absolutely not. No way, no way in hell. For sure. I agree with you 100%. So maybe empathy is the wrong word. It definitely is the wrong word, I guess. But I don't think sympathy is right either. I think understanding the other is fragile is the right word, probably. And therefore behaving as a person who you would imagine feels as the other feels uh, in a legitimately empathic way would behave. So I guess the distinction is fair to make. Your critique of the whole notion and your first sentence is weird. I don't know quite what to make of that. But anyway, um, FE DOMs are concerned about other people's perceptions as opposed to other people's feelings. So that's what the ENTP is proving what FE really is. More precisely, this is the ENTP proving what an adult child does with FE, yes. Well, I mean, there's two different claims there. The first is that the fact that I'm using FE like that is evidence of my own lack of maturity. The second is that I have a lack of maturity. That claim's not substantiated. You know, an adult child. Well, I'm not sure what to say about it, except I think you kind of answer the next question here. I mean, it's exactly like me and INFJ trying to use TI. Well, in this case, yeah, and I think you see why, right? Your TI has fallen short, and hopefully I've explained to you adequately why. That you've locked on to a single choice of word, empathy, which I guess is fairly significant in my whole point, and indicated that it's not really a right use of it, which is fine. You're right enough about that point. It's a good in here, right? A good strong in. But then what you don't do is start with it, first of all. And what you don't do is limit your argument to that. So what you should have done is limit your argument to empathy and lose the first sentence, which is saying, which is a description of my tone, basically. And then don't do what you did, which is try to conflate the deontological thing into the empathy thing, because that's where the biggest mistake. You began with the wrong stuff. You got the right stuff right here in the middle, and then you go into, I guess, extrapolating from the arguments I made in this video to number one, generalizing about me, saying I'm an adult child, specifically as an example of an ENTP. We are often referred to as that, but I think that it's a misunderstanding of the nature of time and identity. It depends on the moment. At the moment, I'm being the adult, right? Because I'm instructing and I'm doing so in a non-abusive way, having learned some lessons this morning from unnecessarily abusing people. You might say that's childish. I'd say you could argue it's the more adult thing to do is to make the mistakes, to be accountable for them, to hold oneself accountable, and to attempt to do better going forward. It is a much more adult position than trying to attain a perfection that leaves you forever without any vulnerabilities. That's not a good way to grow. So, anyway, even adults need to keep growing, and the fact that I display my growth openly doesn't make me less complete, mature, or capable, or accomplished than you. Okay? Or whatever other components you have to say with this adult child thing. Now, you say this here, like you using TI, but you don't perceive yourself as childlike in your use of TI. You wouldn't describe yourself as childlike in your use of TI. You would say probably that this is a good demonstration of your quite competent use of TI. To the extent that it's childlike at all, it's childlike insofar as it is probably motivated by well, I don't know. I don't really have any reason to say that. So I'm not going to. You say that they wouldn't demonstrate TI. INFJs don't demonstrate TI in its essence at all, but I definitely wouldn't claim that my thinking actually reflects my considerations of logical discourse with others. I'm an adult who, to my deep regret, hasn't been able to meet all of my needs through NI and FB at this point. I'm trying to rally energetic investments into my accurate thinking, since I perceive this area to be a tractable shortcoming of my abilities. But whatever I end up doing with TI will ultimately be filtered through a massive labyrinth of NI discounted contingencies, and then again through the fundamental values of universal harmony and collective well-being, FE. And as such, my accuracy is limited to a very specific domain of thought. You don't want to accept the universality of human love and suffering without reason. Fine, I'll give you the reason. Give you a reason in which love and suffering is the only logical axiom. I don't know what you mean in that last little bit. Okay, the last sentence or so. I don't know I'm not sure what you mean there. But in the paragraph before that, the fact that your TI is filtered through a labyrinth of stuff, I mean, I see FE as primarily motivational. FE is more what causes me to correct than anything else. I made the argument there that whatever I said, I don't even remember. Whatever you said, I said. Yeah, that's the ENTP improvement what FE really is. Primarily a joke. And, I care about FE a lot. I think I'm pretty good at it. Do I think I'm as good as an INFJ? No. Your position seems to me you don't know what TI is, and you're willing to concede that in order to make sure I get that I don't know what FE is. Well, whatever. I don't know. It's... I mean, look at that thing, right? Look at that comment. That's not a... This is neither a dialectical comment in which it tries to attain the truth without any conflict, nor is it a argumentative comment in the sense that it tries to lay out concrete arguments about the nature of things as its primary purpose. It uses argumentation to support FE, which is to say, this is about your shaping perceptions of me and you more than anything else. It's not that I have a childlike understanding of FE, it's that I have a prioritization of TI. My understanding of FE at 45 is a lot better than the average ENTP's. It's grown over time. I may still display as childlike, but that's an indication of the shortcoming of your understanding of childhood and adulthood. and your understanding of cognitive growth over time and the nature of an individual's growth arc. So it further is a misunderstanding of the individual as something you get to package and know. You can describe how somebody's behaving in a given set of moments. You can describe how they'll generally behave over time. But of all types, least subject to that is the ENTP. We behave very differently in different moments. We behave very differently in different contexts. You may say that in that regard, our FE is too active. I don't know, but your comment? I'm not very impressed with it. Thing at the beginning. Well, ENTP with tertiary FE is elected to scapegoat himself in light of recent lamentations about his inability to emote, and therefore looking for NTP reasons to denounce his conscious experience of what it is to feel. But see, I'm not denouncing my conscious experience of what it is to feel in general, right? I may be a little bit in this video. That's why you say it sounds like it. This video sounds like, right? He's careful. You're careful, Tanner, not to make that a useful sentence, which is why I avoided it at first. There's nothing I can really do with it. It's distant enough from any meaningful claim that you can pivot out of anything I might say about it. But except for this, it's kind of dirty, right? Like to lay shit down like that in a way that it's not established really as a claim that I can dispute, but it implies all this other shit about me. So yeah, I discourse K it a little bit. Not too hard, though. It's fine. Whatever. I don't care. I do dirty shit all the time, so whatever. You do dirty better than that, though, Tanner. And you don't win because I display that my TI is better. That's not the point. I'm not saying your FE is not better. I'm saying it's not different. I'm unconvinced. I'm convinced that I'm using the wrong word with empathy. I'm unconvinced that FE people are... I mean, I get that we're empathetic. Like, I am quick to cry if I see somebody else suffering. For sure, I'm empathetic. I understand that for sure. But see, I guess the thing is, that doesn't mean that I'm sympathetic. And I think you're absolutely right about that, is that I got those words backwards. I should call us sympathetic and them empathetic. And so you had me, right? If you hammer just that, that's all I can talk about. And it might have taken me a little while to go, yeah, right, fuck, you got me. But regardless, you couched it in a bunch of other crap that's not useful. So I get to spend most of my time talking about that. And I get to win on the deontology point. You made the deontology point first. It seems like the main point of your thing. So I win overall, right? That's why you don't want to... Well, it's like Taylor says. One bullet, right? With an argument, better to have one bullet a lot of times than a shotgun blast. Shotgun blast allows your opponent to do all sorts of framing. And that's one to grow on. Thanks for watching Talking to People.